We're good. One sec. I'm going to get a nice little sip of. It looks like urine, but I promise it's just it's just Utopia. I still have some of the Utopia from De Novo Nutrition.
Oh, I think they've changed. Well, I don't know. I got an email from like Ben. Um, was it Elemental Formulations or something? I don't know. I'm
Correct.
probably
Correct.
butchering that.
What's funny is this is actually the gamer focus one. I bought it quite some time ago. I stocked up a little bit, and now I'm just going through it. So yeah,
I
that's
got
right.
I got a ton of I got quite a few samples from well, Luke sent me some, and then when I was recording my exercise library with Gordon, because he done a lot of like video stuff with them, he just gave me like just a bunch of samples. I'm like, dude, I'm not taking this right now, because if I take it now, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be jumping. I'm gonna be way too zoned in for his recordings. So, but yeah, and I've still got dozens of those left. Yeah, it's cool.
Good, good,
Yeah,
good. Well, let's jump into stimulants in a minute because I think that could be
dude,
might
I
be
can
a.
talk about stimulants all day long.
I know you can. That's why it might be a fun little segue. But first, I just wanted to first say thanks for being here. It's good to formally see you again. I think it's been quite some time since we've talked quote unquote face to face. And how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. That's always a weird question because it's always like how deep do you want to go?
I just yeah, how have things been over the past few months? We can go back into COVID and just how have you been lately?
Yeah, no, things been good. Thankfully, considering how much of a shit show everything else has been, with everything going on. But I can't complain, man. Like, thankfully, things have been, yeah, they've been pretty much normal, to be honest. I mean, other than some positive stresses, just
Sure.
based on with some projects that I've been working on. Well, beginning of around this time last year, and also the new project that I'm working on currently. So yeah, so there's good stresses, which is taking up a lot of my time. Um, yeah, it's just I can't really complain. So it's all good over here. I know that you moved to New York recently as well. Not recently, yeah, I guess it was recently.
Yes, sir.
Um,
In August. In August.
how you finding
I
New York
I
City?
I am here in New York City right now. It's cool, man. It's I'm not getting its full effects right now because there's like, however many thousands of people that aren't here right now. But it's cool because as the people who have heard on this podcast probably multiple times, it's like New York on training wheels. So for me, for someone who's come from a more rural area and there's not as many people, it's nice because it gives me a little bit of a brief period of time where maybe things will ramp back up later on as COVID starts to subside. But for the most part, as I've told everybody, you are who you are, your habits, your routines, everything that you care about. It's just like there's more buildings now, there's more people, but it's like, I work, I hang out with my girlfriend, I work out, we watch TV shows and things, and now we just have more variety to do all of those things. Basically, if we want to go out to eat somewhere new every single day, we still won't even cover like our block of
Yeah,
restaurants. So
yeah.
it's been cool. It's been there's a bunch of different pros and cons, but I think it's definitely been more of a learning experience, and I think that's been for now I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with it. Are
Yeah, New
you
York was cool.
are you a big you don't live in the city, right?
Not anymore, no. So I sort of grew up in London, um, well, South London, but it has a very similar vibe to like New York. So when I came to New York City, I was like, man, this is just like a greater London. And I remember I posted on my Facebook as well. Um, it just felt like a much more greater version of London.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, no, but recent. So we moved, my girlfriend and I, we moved to where we're living currently, which is it's not central. Um, so it's just like kind of on the outskirts of like London. It's still quite a big city, but it's a lot more calm. Like it's a lot more chilled. There's like a huge park opposite with like
Are,
deers and
are
shit.
you
And
deer? Yeah, there you go. Some deer. There you go. Are you in a house or apartment?
It's apartment. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I'm not, I mean, we're thinking of buying a house probably, I don't know, like a year or two. I mean, our lease doesn't end here in, I think next year. Like, I think next summer, if
Right.
that. So, but we haven't actually formally started to, think about like this shit. I mean, I had this conversation with like my brother, and because I'm just looking to get a house. I just don't know. I just don't know if I still want to be locked down into like one place. Because the cool thing with an apartment is you can just like, after 2 years or a year, however long you want to stay there, it's like you just, okay, cool, I want to go live here for a while, and you can just kind of get up and move.
Trust issues. I get
Yeah,
it.
severe commitment issues to one place. And so that's why I'm just like in two minds about, is that something like, do I really want to buy a house? And then like, there's a part of me, I'm just like, especially with everything that happened last year, with like COVID and just being in London and like being so gloomy and like rainy and stuff. And I'm just like, why am I here? Like I can just go live in Spain or, go live somewhere else and like, but then I just never do it because I know that I love England. I was born here, and I just like have this weird affinity for London, and just the city and everything. I guess it's like people who grown up in New York, they just like love New York, and that's like their they always sort of end up going back to it in some way.
It's like a cult. it really is like a cult.
Yeah, so it's not as bad here. Like I don't know what, maybe with some people, but for me personally, I mean, all my family's here, even though I don't really see them that much, which is all on me. And I don't know, it's just weird because like even when we go on holiday, like we go to Spain or we go somewhere, I'm just like, yeah, this is amazing. And then like a week into, I'm like, I want to go home now. I'm just like, because I get so worn out. I think the only place that I didn't have that feeling was when we went to Japan. Like I was not ready to leave. I think that was the only time that I've been to like another country or another city where I legitimately felt sad on the last day. Like usually I'm just ready to get back home. But Japan is just an amazing place. Like it's 100% my favorite place, like in the world. And I mean, we were supposed to go last year, but then, like COVID happened and stuff. So I'm just like waiting for Japan to open, just trying, get back there as well. But no, like, yeah, it's the good thing with where we're living right now is the park, because when the lockdowns happened and you could only go outside for like an hour, get some exercise in. Right. Like that park was a lifesaver. I say that, but I didn't really. It was a lifesaver for my girlfriend. I mean, I've been so sedentary; it's unbelievable. Like it's almost cringeworthy me talking about it. But yeah, I mean, it's just also it's a much bigger apartment. Like I have my own office space now, whereas before, it's like a 1 bed. This is a 2 bed, and like there's enough room to like train. Like you got some dumbbells and so
sure,
that's been really cool because I couldn't imagine doing that where we were living before. So if lockdown happened and we were there, like it would have taken a much bigger toll because you just couldn't do anything. It was just so small. But so yeah, so I think it was very fortunate that we kind of ended up here.
Yeah. No, I understand. It's funny. I've actually kind of done the reverse. In Kentucky, I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and now here in New York, we've got a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. So we've been, especially my girlfriend, she's been in law school, so she's been on Zoom basically. And so we've been. I like my desk is right here, her desk is right here. So we've been navigating that, but. It's been fine. Like there could be much worse situations that we could be in. And luckily, like you said, like me and you have trained for this our whole lives being online coaches, it's like not really much changes besides us being behind our laptop all day.
So like I had this running joke with like when people get a call, I talk to someone and they're like, oh, so, how you find lockdown? Like, dude, as someone who's like, on like I think I'm like 99th percentile introverted. Like I've trained for this my whole life. Like this is, this is nothing to me. This is like, I was born for this stuff. That being said, I think the most recent lockdown, it did sort of, it did start getting to me. Like we're in lockdown 3.0, like 5 months in now. So I think the third time around, I did start to feel it. Like even my introversion was like, bro,
dude,
seriously, get the fuck out of the house.
I understand completely. I think but I don't realize it until, because like I'm not as introverted as you, but I still love like having my solitude and things. But I've realized lately that whenever I do get the option to go out to eat or go hang around with people or be with friends, just grab drinks with friends, just kind of like old times or whatever, that's whenever it hits me. It's like social interactions. Like this is cool. Like this is like you realize how much, like, because of how good I feel after I get those social interactions again. I'm just like, oh, I don't even realize how deprived of this I've been over the past few months until you actually get a taste of it. And then you're like, fuck, I miss this, you know?
Yeah, I can imagine that happening once we open up here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like we did like a Zoom call. No Zoom call. It was like this weird virtual call with like my brother, my cousin, my girlfriend was there, and like their significant others, and
right.
And even just that, even though it was virtual, like just that interaction, I was like, damn man, I miss these guys. Like, so I definitely feel like once we get back, once we're able to go out and meet people and do stuff again, I definitely feel like that the path that will come back. I'll definitely be like, damn, like this was, you don't realize how much you'd miss it until like, it actually does happen. And even when before like this whole COVID stuff, working at home was obviously something which I had, I do. But there was, there's always you could always go out, like you could, the weekend or whenever you could just go out and, get food or go watch a movie and stuff. But I think now with you actually just being forced into your house, your apartment, it's very much like, there's only a certain, there's so much you can take until it starts to like, it starts to get to you. But again, as I said, I was very fortunate in that because I was so busy with a lot of the projects, I didn't really have time to even, like think about any of that stuff. It wasn't until like September when we actually just launched that I felt like, I think it just kind of hit me. Like I remember I slept the day after like 14 hours and even the days after, I was just like waking up super late and I was just wasn't that same level of motivation, just wasn't there. It's almost like, you're using up all this adrenaline and, all this energy to just focus on this one thing. And then once you've done it, you kind of just like realize like how, how much you're running on like fumes. And so, and that's when I really just felt, I don't know if it was burnout, it probably was, but I just felt like, there was like no motivation to do anything. But that was definitely something which helped a lot, like just having something to focus on, and not being so, like occupied with what's going on. Not in like an ignorant way, but more so in just a way like, okay, cool, this is happening, but there's stuff that you need to focus on. So that was super, super beneficial.
Yeah, sure. What does your, and I guess maybe it would differ between whenever you're in the middle of a hardcore, modafinil filled adrenaline of project mode, and then more of just kind of like a rest and relaxation. But what does like a typical day actually kind of look like for you? Like if you want to walk me, let's walk through it a little bit. I'm curious on what Aadam Ali goes through on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm regimented, like. It's also very, I find it hilarious because I don't actually have a schedule. Like I know people schedule in the day and it's like micro seconds, like everything's like super, like I don't do that. Like it's very much, I go to the flow, go with the flow to some extent, but there is like an overarching structure. So for me, I will generally wake up about 4:30, 5, and then I'll just like screw around on Instagram or Facebook, just waste my time.
So Aadam Ali checks his phone in the morning, first thing?
Yeah.
You crazy son of a bitch.
I don't do like meditation. I don't do, yoga for an hour and like stretch and then like, fucking
make some tea.
Yeah, make some tea. Like I don't do any of that stuff. Like people don't get so caught up like a morning routine, and I'm just like, yeah, my morning routine consists of me like jerking off on Facebook for like an hour, like on Instagram or just messing around, and then when I feel bad enough, like I'm like, damn, I really should start doing something. It's like an hour's gone by. It's like 5:30, so then I'll read for like an hour and a half. So about 6:30,
wait a second. I'm gonna cut you off a few times through this because I like the details of this. So whenever you read, is there a certain type of book you like reading, or do you read multiple books at one time? How do you choose which thing you read first?
So for me personally, I always have two books going at one time. So one will be more of like a nonfiction book, which is what you would read in the morning. And then I always have like a fiction book, which I read, as I'm getting ready for bed. So for me personally, I'll always have two books going at the same time. There are a few, rare occasions where I might have like three books going. Like if a book's really interested me, I might, read that as well. So recently, last year, Naval's book,
Navalmanak.
The Navalmanak.
Yeah, so good.
I actually bought the book, and I was in the middle of my two other books, and I just started skimming through it. And I was like, I just was so engrossed in the book just because of the stuff he was saying. I was like, damn, this is just like highlighting different sections. And so that basically became like my third book. And the same thing happened with The Psychology of Money.
I read that too, Morgan Housel.
Yeah, Morgan Housel. Yeah, that was another one of those books where I was like, damn, this is really, really good. So I was like, like as I was just like browsing it, I was like stopping, making notes, underlining. And so there'll be rare occasions where I have like three books at one time, but generally it'll just be two books. So there's like a non-fiction book in the mornings, and then there'll be a fiction book before bed.
Do you so what you said about the ideas thing is super interesting, because I am the same exact, like the first thing, so whenever I read in the mornings, I do have like a pad and a pen, or even just like my notes app up or something, so that I can write on that. But typically the whole point of my morning reading is to, of course, learn things, but also as soon as it sparks an idea or like some type of creative thing in me that I'm like, oh, I need to write about this. That's typically whenever maybe I'll even put that down altogether and just go start doing something, or I'll keep continuing on and taking notes and things. So that's interesting that you say that.
Yeah. Like I used to be super like obsessive about note taking, like a few years ago. Like I had this whole system going, and I would export the notes like a Google Doc or my Evernote, and then
Tim Ferriss type stuff. Yeah,
just like I got super, super obsessed with it, and then I don't know what happened. I just kind of I guess just got older, and I was like, well, I haven't got time for this shit anymore. But now it's just like I'm not as structured with my note taking. It's more like, if something, if an idea really stands out, like it actually makes me go, like this is interesting. It makes me stop, and then I'll go back and read it again. Then it's worth me sort of like, really thinking about it. And, if that does, naturally lead to me thinking about something else, I'll write it down. Because, I'm just like, whatever. Like I remember, a few years ago, I used to post a lot more about like what I'm reading, because I was like one of those douchebags who do that back in the day. And I'd get a lot of questions from people like, so how do you take notes? Like, how do I know what I should take notes on? I'm like, dude, it's not serious. Like, seriously, just anything that makes you stop when you're reading, or, it makes you want to read it back, or, whatever the case is, it doesn't matter how dumb you think it is, or, you're doing it for yourself, like whatever it is that makes you, that sparks a bit of like curiosity. Just underline that.
That's what Naval. Remember what Naval says. He's just like, if it's good enough, you'll remember it. He's like, you don't. You don't even need to take a note, because you'll remember it.
Yeah, I do, and I can 100% attest to that. Like there'll be times when I'm having a conversation with someone, and someone says something, and it sparks an idea which I've read in the book. It's like, and so I'm not as structured with my note taking anymore. But I do, if there's a book that's really good, I will sort of like make notes, or just highlight some stuff, and then so then I know that if I want to go back to it for research or anything, like I can always go back to it.
It's more so like cataloging, kind of.
Oh yeah. I think one thing that I found super interesting, and because recently I've been sort of throwing out a lot of my old books that I have that I've either finished reading or not using anymore. And when you do that, you end up going through some of your old notes that you highlighted, and it's interesting to see how much your personalities change. Like stuff that you may have found insightful, interesting, 5 or 6 years ago, it's kind of like, okay, cool. Don't know what I was thinking when I did that, but and so like even just not even just that, but I think it's also very it's almost like a diary of sorts, because like I'll see a note that I've written in a book that I read, say, 7 years ago, And then I'll remember that, okay, this was around the time, when like I had just recently dropped out of university and I was in this weird space, with like not knowing what to do. And there was a lot of like insecurity around that. So that's why certain books, I was attracted to certain books and certain things in those books, but that stuff doesn't really appeal to me anymore. But yeah, so like you said, it's a good way to sort of, like essentially, it acts as some sort of like a diary. When you look back on it, you can essentially, you can sort of remember where you were.
Do you do any type of, sorry to cut you off, do you do any type of formal like journaling or writing, even in like a plain text or anything like that?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Again, I guess I'm just getting too old for this stuff. Like I just don't have the time anymore, like the energy. So like these days, I just don't. I used to journal a ton. Like I still got like tons of journals that I've just saved, and but now I'm just like, I just don't have time for this stuff anymore. Like, and so now, like, someone actually recently asked me this because I said something in an email or something, and someone replied and said, "Oh, so when you do your like writing in the morning, is that sort of focused on fitness stuff? Is it like journaling?" And I'm just like, yeah, it's just specific. It's very much related to physiconomics and whatever that content piece I'm working on at the time. But yeah, I don't do like a lot of like self journaling or any other stuff anymore.
Yeah. So. I excuse me. I don't do it like formally or anything like that, or like every single day. It's more so, it typically only happens whenever something notable, either positive or negative, kind of happens. I use it almost as like a more of a bookmark of that time. And it could be several months before I write anything at all. But it's just whenever I have that kind of whimsical feeling, like, oh, maybe I should document that. Like I don't even think twice, and I pull it out real quick, and it's just an app, and I just write down a few sentences, or maybe it's a couple paragraphs or whatever. And it's cool to have that, because now that I've gathered up a few entries and things, I can go back and look and kind of see, like you said, the headspace that you're in. It's interesting to notice patterns, or like if you're still worried about the same shit, or if you're still having the exact same problems, and you can kind of identify that. Or it's just like, what did I do on this random Thursday in 2019 or something, I think that's cool too.
Yeah, I think that's for me personally, like a lot of that is where the value is, outside of like, stuff that's very specific to, content related or whatever. I think one of the values is just having some sort of a snapshot of like who you were
exactly
at that time, which is always super interesting. It's kind of like when you go back and read your old content and you're kind of like, oh, this sucks, but I'm so much better now.
Oh, you mean from like 2 months ago? Yeah.
Yeah. From like 2 months ago, like, oh fuck. But even like, when you see like Facebook memories and
of course,
like, oh, my delete.
Yeah.
It was like, fuck.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's just I think that's not super interesting. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So we moved past the morning books, and then so after that, do you have like?
Yeah. So I jerked off on Facebook for like 5 hours and wasted my life, and I probably like offended every productivity guru out there. It was so then I'll read for an hour, and then I'll get up, brush my teeth, and start making coffee, and then Instagram a bit more, or just messing around social media or whatever for more. And then I'll spend, I think around 6:30, 6:45, around 6:30ish, I'll sort of like sit down at my desk. And then it takes me like 5-10 minutes to get warmed up, to actually like want to do anything. So I might go on Facebook for a bit more.
I was just saying, what do you do in that 5 to 10 minutes? Yeah.
So I just I'll check in on my Facebook group just to see, there's like any, like comments so that I can, get back to whoever. Or I'll just open up the document and just like stare at it until I hate myself enough to actually start wanting to write something.
Clean your desk or something. Yeah.
Just do the most random stuff or like I did this morning, spill coffee everywhere and then spend like 20 minutes cleaning everything up.
It's super clean now.
Dude, except for the wall, because the wall's got like a coffee stain on it, which is probably going to get deducted from my down payment or whatever.
Should have bought the house.
Yeah, by that time, I probably should have. And then I'll write for like so 2-3 hours. So like my week is very much structured in like Monday, Tuesday is very much like article focused or content focused, and then Wednesdays are more focused on writing stuff on my weekly email, like getting that stuff ready, and finding what I want to talk about in tomorrow's email, gathering any potential research or making notes on stuff that I might need to get later, and then Fridays is a lot more chill, just because I kind of start to wind down a little bit. So in the mornings, I think Fridays is more related. I'll do more of the writing related to my for my members. So like I have like this monthly. It's not just me; it's also Colby Souza, who's now the chief science officer at Physiconomics, which sounds way more fancier than it really is. But he's an awesome guy. He's so we'll look at like 4 new studies and also like break them down and so a lot of that. So Fridays is a lot more focused on that. And then, so going back to the day and not like spanning over the week.
No, it's cool. I'll give you a second to think about it. It's cool because I structure my week. I kind of did it on accident, just as far as it's more like energy focused, like what I have energy for. And typically on certain days, I have more just free time because whether I don't have updates with clients or that kind of stuff. Like I put all of my creative work more so on those days, and then other days would be more for like podcasting or doing like small videos and things like that. But yeah, it's interesting how you structure your days based around not necessarily like a certain like highest priority, but like your energy. So like on Fridays, you're not going to put your highest creative work on a Friday just because of the natural energy flow throughout the week, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And this is something which I've, it's become more apparent to me over the last year. And I say that because one of the things I've always struggled with, and we've discussed this, I think I mentioned this on the last podcast we did, like on struggling with like perfectionism and not perfectionism in the sense of like, oh, I'm such a perfectionist. Like, people just like throw that word around. It's more like, it's like the type of perfectionism where it can actually become like, destructive. And I've been very honest about like, how that's been like one of the biggest struggles I've had. And I think when my fat loss article went viral, that sort of just pushed that level up to like a fucking like 9,000, because what I started to do then was essentially, I started comparing everything I did after.
Oh, that was like the bench. That's the benchmark now,
right? Because like, oh, dude, that fucking super viral, and like, it's had X amount of shares and et cetera, and it's like, everything you create now, it has to be as good as that, better than that, and it's like, and that's something that I struggled with for a long time. And one thing I've also realized is, it was around that time that my consistency with my content started to fall off a little bit. And I think it's gotten a lot worse now. Like it's well, at least until like last year. And so around, I think March, April last year, I basically told myself, look, like this is some bullshit. Like, I'm going to start building in some consistency again. And so what I decided to do was create this new email newsletter thing called Physiconomics Weekly. And so previously, even though I'd written emails like once or twice a week, I wanted a bit more structure to it. So all of 2019, I was doing like this Aadam answer segment where the entire email was basically just me answering reader questions. And the thing with that is it's cool to answer questions, but it wasn't as challenging, because like you have the questions that people are asking you and you're just answering them, right? And it didn't feel as challenging. So I wanted to essentially challenge myself to actually like create new stuff. So what I did was I created this hybrid newsletter, which is essentially the Aadam answer segment, because that seemed to be very popular with people. But also I wanted to have like a mini article in every email, which I call the Thursday tidbit. And the goal with that was a way for me to sort of overcome that perfectionism. Like, you know, forcing myself to send like a mini article every week. And I think I've done that pretty consistently for almost a year now. But one thing I realized is how your energy wanes. Like, you know, like there are some Thursdays where you can tell, like if you read through some of the emails, there'll be days where I'm like making jokes, you know, I'm like, you know, and there'll be days where I'm just like, it sounds very bland, like, you know, and you can tell because it's like, you know, you just, it's that, and you know, it's like some Thursdays I'm like hyped, you know, I'm in a good mood, and it's like I want to, you know, I'll make a joke, and just like it's that voice that a lot of people sort of associate with physiconomics. And there's other days where it's just kind of like, but I'm still doing it. And I think this is the big thing which it's helped me a lot is I started to create this like this vision of who I thought my readers thought I should be, which is like a really super meta. But the thing is, it's not true. Like most people don't really care. Like most people don't read into as much as I do, right? Yeah. And so what I realized was actually this I only came to that realization actually journaling, like a few days, like I was writing something on perfectionism and it was supposed to go out in an email. And I never ended up sending it because it was a bit too rambly and like my thoughts weren't coherent. But that was like the one bit that I, you know, kind of popped out at me, was that, you know, me not creating content as consistently I wanted to. Most of the issue was around me creating this like, oh, but you know, physiconomics has to sound this way, or you know, there has to be like swearing in it, or there has to be like, you know, the sort of like joke in it, or whatever the case is. Like
this checklist of who this imaginary avatar is of you. Yeah,
exactly. And so what I realized is, and so what I realized is that, you know, like I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. Like even, you know, like my voice has changed. Like, I still write, you know, there is some remnants of that old Adam, but I'm like 3-4 years older now. You know, I'm not the same person I was back then. So you can't expect you know, my writing's immature with it as well. You know, like the stuff that I want to talk about or not talk about. You know, I don't swear as much as I used to, and these are just, and it's not like an intentional thing. It's just you grow. You know, you change.
I'm sorry. This happens with more than just content, right? Just for people listening, I'm sure that they can relate to feeling like they need to uphold these certain promises or expectations that they made of their old self. Right, instead of changing and evolving, right?
Yeah, that's actually a really. I love the way that you phrase that. Like you know,
I heard it from somebody. I don't. So I can't take all credit, but yeah, thank you.
Well, actually, but that is basically what is you essentially. It's what I wrote an article on something called responsibility debt. Yeah, but it's where, you know, you kind of keep offloading your responsibility to your future self, and then you get to like 5 years later and you're like, we have all this responsibility debt. And in the same way, I think we tie ourselves to who we were, say 2-3 years ago. And I see this a lot with clients as well, you know, bringing it back to fitness. When someone will say, oh, but I want to weigh what I was when I was in like high school. I'm like, you're like, what are you talking about? You're a freaking adult now.
Completely different.
Like you can't weigh what you know, like, and so, but it's because they, you know, they're like, oh, but you know, when I was in my 30s or 20s, I was so athletic. Like, yeah, because you were in school, you don't have a job, you don't have kids. Like, what the hell do you know? Like, cool. If you want to go and, you know, if you just want to focus on fitness, then cool. But then when you do your kids,
go back to literally just like school and like smoking pot and fitness. And, like, sure.
Sports, yeah, exactly. Sports, and so I think that, you know, and that was one of the biggest things I realized is, just like forcing yourself to do stuff, like, and another trap I fell into, and it's funny for me to talk about this because it makes it more tangible when I'm saying it, because usually it's all in my head. It's like having conversations with myself. But another thing that I realized, because one thing that's which I fell for, and I started justifying it as well, was like this whole thing of that you'll hear people say, oh, if you don't have anything to say, don't say it, right? And for years I was like, yeah, 100%, like, you know, I don't have anything to say right now, I'm not going to say it, etc. But then I realized that there's a strange thing that happens with that mentality. And the thing is, if you don't have anything to say, you end up with nothing to say. Like it becomes like this feedback loop where you're like, oh, I really want to talk about this stuff. I don't really know, you know, like, do I really want to say this? You know, I don't know if, you know, it's going to be a bit dumb, whatever the case is. And then you just keep justifying it, and then you just never do anything. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
so for me, like having this just really regimented schedule of like, if you don't do anything else like the entire week, like if you don't create any other content, you don't post on Instagram, you don't write, you know, an article, web, if you don't do anything else, as long as you get the Physiconomics Weekly email sent out with the tidbit, you've won the week. That was like the thing for me. Like instead of having the bar set so high, I just brought the bar right down to kind of like what and I wrote about this in the email recently. I labeled it flexible goal setting, where instead of you having like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym 7 times a week, I'm going to eat clean or whatever, you know, 3 times a day or whatever the case is, like, yes, that's awesome. Have those big goals, but also give yourself some range. Like, don't just, if you can't train 7 times per week, like if that's your big goal, great. But the thing is, if you only focus on that one goal, it becomes this benchmark that you're always comparing yourself to. So it's always like, it becomes very binary, like, oh, you either train 7 times per week or you failed. You know, you've either hit your macros or you failed. And so it's like, but when you approach it more from the mindset of, okay, cool, I want to aim to hit 7 times per week, or, you know, whatever the case is. But if I can only get 3 workouts in or 2 workouts in, hell, even 1 workout in, that's a win. And so for me personally, that's been really helpful in sort of overcoming a lot of that like perfectionism, where it's like, instead of it just being, you have to create an Instagram post, you have to write an article, you have to, you know, and this email, it's just like, cool, if you don't do anything else, like this just is one thing, that's a successful week.
Yeah.
Which, you know, obviously take care of my clients, otherwase I wouldn't have
yeah, right. That's a given. That's a given. No,
like I'm just talking just purely from like a creative or that sort of point of view. Like that's the biggest thing that I struggled with. And so having this like super regimented schedule where it's like, cool, Thursdays is your email day. That's when you want to send the emails out. You have to get everything ready for that. It works because it means like it provides structure to the rest of my week as well. Because I know like Wednesdays or, you know, even a Friday, I know that I start, you know, thinking about the next week's email, and then just forcing myself to write, like waking up. You know, you'll wake up some days and you haven't slept properly. You know, or you've slept amazing, but you still feel like shit for whatever reason, right? You took in too much modafinil and, you know,
fried.
Or you've stacked it with nicotine gum, and it's just like your brain's like, man, bro, I'm out. So
that's great.
So like, but me sort of like dissociating my, you know, not having that be like sort of like this reason for me not to do stuff. That's been huge, and it's actually helped a lot, because now what's happened is it's allowed me to, you know, I published a new article on the website after like a year, like that was, you know, so and I've already started to, you know, I've got another article ready, and it's like, you know, I've already finished research on my 3rd article, and so and that's what I needed to bring it down from like the public, you know, as in, oh, but if I share it on my website or Instagram, you know, thousands of people will see it. And if it's, you know, like, so there's a lot of that perfectionism. That's where it sort of like rears its ugly head, because it starts to talk to you. And it's like, I always think of my perfectionism as like this like little demon thing that, you know, it's like always talking to me, and it's like, you know, it's telling you all the ways that it sucks. And I actually made I think I made like illustration on my Instagram page once, like just sort of me visualizing it. That's not neither here nor there, but just a fun factoid into the weird mind of Adam. But
I love it.
I think, but doing that allowed me to essentially, you know, not worrying about, oh, but this doesn't sound funny enough, or, you know, this is it's not written as well as I would like. It's like you don't, that, you know, that thing that's like stopping you from just doing whatever it is needs to be done. That's been super powerful in just, you know, in getting over that hump. And it's also had a knock-on effect on other, you know, other creative things that I want to do, in terms of like, you know, writing articles again, and hopefully, fingers crossed, posting on Instagram more consistently. So,
sure.
But I think that's been super beneficial. Just having that, you know, that one day where I'm just like on one thing, and if you can do that one thing, you know, don't worry about. Because, and I said this, and I think I posted about this on Instagram as well, that I think one of the things that I've struggled with, and I think everyone struggles with it. And I don't believe anyone who says, "Oh, I don't care how many likes I get, or I don't care what my engagement's like," because if you genuinely believe that, you're either lying or you're a sociopath. Like,
Right.
people care. Like, it's hard for you not to care about that stuff. And it's like, yeah, we know that it's whatever, right? Just like we tell our clients, that don't worry about your weight fluctuations. It's like, I think I've gotten more empathetic to clients who struggle with the scale, because it's very similar to like me, associating my self-worth with likes or shares, just like a lot of people will associate their self-worth with a random number. Like when a client's telling you this, or they're telling it to some random, like, dude, who cares? It's a fucking number. But it's not just a number as well. Like, it is, but it's also not. Like, there's a lot of it's a very loaded thing. Like, it is just a number, but also there's a lot of stuff, and like,
it's feedback.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, exactly. And so going back into, with like an email, you don't get that feedback. So it's like, you do get feedback to some extent, because you get responses. People say, really enjoyed today's email, but it's not the same as likes, or like, that kind of metric. And I think that's one of the biggest things which really mess with me. Like, if I spent a lot of time creating an Instagram post and it didn't do as well as I wanted it to, I'm like, fuck this is bullshit. And then I get like really, like, in a really sour mood. And it would just mess up my day, like, or the week even. Like, I just wouldn't be in that mood to like do anything.
Sure.
So moving away from just, that's sort of like the like validation and that metric, and just sending out email into oblivion, essentially, because you're saying that to people's emails, you don't know if they're going to read it, but there's not that feedback. That's been another thing that's been super helpful in just getting over that hump of just like creating stuff and not worrying about the likes and the shares, and whatever the case is.
Yeah, no, I love that. I want to know because this is something that I've done to a fault, and I've actually talked to Nick Sorrell about it. I'm wondering if you either do it now or maybe you did in the past, but so for everybody who doesn't know, Adam, you followed me on Instagram quite some time ago, whenever I was first starting my blog and things, and I followed you, and I really looked up to you and your work and stuff. And whenever you followed me and told me, whenever you told me like, hey man, paraphrasing, but you were like, hey man, I really like your work. Keep doing what you're doing. And then you followed me, and you only followed like, I think it was like 60 some people at the time. I was like, what the fuck? Like it meant so much to me. And I don't know if I've told you this before. I think I have, but I really do appreciate that. And I still think about that all the time. But what has happened is every time, and I guess this is good and bad, and I think it's mostly good, but what I tend to do whenever I create something, I hold it up to, what would Adam think of this? And and I say that, and you might laugh, but it's helped me a lot, because well, one, I can check in with myself and make sure that I am being myself, but two, I'm making sure that quality is first, and I'm making sure that I am proud of the work that I do. And I think to a point that can be very helpful whenever you have somebody that you look up to, and you try to, even if you don't even mean to, you kind of imitate how they write, how they work, whatever this may be. But then it can come to a point where you also kind of need to develop into your own and figure out your own voice. And maybe, me and you are going to have differences. And just because you wouldn't post something like this, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't, right? But I think that having that, what would Adam do? I have it like you, and then there's like a few others who I really look up to, and I'm like, what would they think of this? And I think net, it's definitely been more positive. But I'm wondering if you've ever thought of, oh, so and so might see this, or what would they think of this if they saw it? And that's either helped you or hindered you in that process.
Yeah, no, I always not in that sort of way, but like, I think I do definitely, even now, like even before, you do definitely to people who are, who have inspired you in some ways. For me personally, like Mark Manson, obviously, like he's been huge with my writing, and Tim Urban of Wait But Why. They're just two of the big ones who've had huge influences. And I think if you read my content, you can get a feel for that, with like, especially back in the day when I used to do like stick man drawings and whatnot. Like, there's a lot of the essence, there's a lot of it is there. Like, you can, definitely tell that those two, maybe you don't realize it, but if I mention it, like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. One thing that I do is I think it just goes back to, like the whole, that quote of comparison is the thief of joy. I don't agree with that completely. I think unfocused comparison is the thief of joy. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have something, if you don't have like a benchmark that you're striving toward, it's like you're never going to improve. Like I remember years ago now when I met like Gary V and Mike, and I remember Mike and I went to train, and Mike McConty for people who are listening.
Yeah.
I actually forgot his name for a second.
It's all good. It's all good.
I was stalling. So Mike and I were having this conversation, and when we were talking about, like, he said to me, you need to be more consistent with your content and etc. And I was like, yeah, but, and I can't remember the exact comment, but I said something like, but look at Mark Manson and look at, Wait But Why, and he was like, I'm happy that you use someone like of that level, because it's a good way to sort of elevate your own game. But at the same time, it's like you have to remember that you're not them. Like, you have to. They're in a completely different place, and where you are right now, you need you to have a different game towards content creation and stuff. And I always think of that when the reason I tell you that story is because it ties in with the whole unfocused comparison thing, because I think a lot of what we do is very much like passive. Like we go on Instagram and we like see 5,000 people who look like 10 out of 10, and you're like, damn, like now I feel like shit, great. But that's unfocused comparison. Like focused comparison would be like being intentional with your comparison would be having a role model, or having someone that you look up to or you aspire to be like, or and in that way you always have something which is pushing you to be better. Otherwise, if we didn't do that on some level, we'd all just be like some a bunch of apathetic potatoes, and we just sit around and we don't want to improve and not do anything, right? So that having someone or something that like we
strive for,
whether that's an ideal, whether that's like a person or whatever the case is, that's how you're going to continue to improve. It's almost like a bit of it's like a gauge that you can use where you're like, okay, cool, so where am I right now, and how much more do I have how much more do I have to go, and so I think that's one thing that I'm very intentional with is comparing myself, but in a very focused and intentional way.
What are some of those characteristics? Because I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think where it can get dicey is where people see maybe they aren't self-aware enough to know that their self-esteem is rooted in many things, but they see the guy, they see Grant Cardone with the jet, and they see him with this and this and this, and so they think, okay, that's my future self that I'm relating myself to. That's the focused comparison that I'm doing. How do you know which attributes are actually ones that you should strive for that will legitimately make your life better? I think Naval talks a lot about this type of stuff.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think, and again, I might be wrong, so don't hold this against me. People listening, like, yeah, okay, a bunch of hate. No, hey man, you don't know what you're talking about. But one thing that I've realized is that you always, at least to some extent, you're always going to be attracted to, and I use that word very loosely, to someone who has similar ideals to you, I guess. Like, because you're, and to some extent, like there's going to be something about someone that you want to be like that. You're like, for some reason, a particular trait stands out. Like whatever that trait is, like
it's an interesting like future vision of even not just like being that person in its entirety, but a certain part of that person that you admire and you relate to. You're like, you can kind of see into your future. If that's your ideal goal, it's like, and you're working towards that, then one day, hopefully you hope to be in that same position, right?
Yeah, I think Warren Buffett, he actually has a quote where, I'm going to butcher this, but he says something like, think of the person that you admire, like, whoever that person is, you love you and you want to have all the good traits, and then think about someone that you really despise or someone you don't want to be like, and then think about all the traits that they have that you don't want to adopt, right? And then now you have like a somewhat of a framework to the things that you should not focus on, the things that you avoid, and the things that you should focus on, the things that you should intentionally sort of move toward. And so I think that's a good way to to do it. Like one person that I've always used is my dad, because my dad's like, even though I wouldn't have admitted it like 5-6 years ago, but like no, now I'm at my point where I can say, yeah, my dad was like a huge role model for me growing up. And I think a lot of the characteristics I have today were influenced by my dad when I was growing up, like hard work, integrity and honesty. And so there's a lot of things that he not even like sort of, outwardly said it. It was just like his actions.
You observed it. You observed
right.
it. Yeah.
And so by the same time, like there were a lot of characters my dad had, which, I didn't want to adopt. So that's only just one person, like,
sure.
But, there's other people that I don't want to be like, or this, it's always a tricky thing because you might want to be like someone, but you don't want to adopt all of their traits because they might be like, they're off a shithead and, like they might, so.
That's just as valuable though. Right? Knowing what you don't want to be, I think is just as valuable as knowing what you do want to be.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, focusing on what you don't want is so much easier than like focusing on what you do want, because oftentimes I think when you just focus on stuff that you do want, sometimes it's very, there's a bit of like, it's like a social validations kind of thing. Like, oh, okay, that person's got a jet, so that's probably what I want because fuck it, a jet.
And because you don't know what you want. You don't know what you want. Yeah, sometimes.
All the time.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's also just things change. Like, stuff that I would have wanted like 5 years ago, I don't care about stuff anymore, right? And so, but I think that's I think that's a good way to, for me at least, it's like. Because you said something along the lines of like, it's a good way to sort of future cast and like, envision yourself, with that person's traits. And I think that's one thing that I do. And I actually got this from Jordan Peterson, where he said that, like imagine if you kept doing the things that you dislike or the things that you don't like about yourself, right? And again, I'm paraphrasing. So,
sure.
But so he's basically saying like, all the things that that all the like traits about you, or the personality traits, whatever cases that you don't like or aren't productive to the person you want to be. Like envision what your life would be like 5 years from now if you kept going down that route. And,
imagine the hell, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then use that as instead of having that anxiety in front of you, so weighing you down and, stopping you from moving forward, put that anxiety behind you to sort of have you, moving towards the person or the goal that you want to have.
It's have it behind you to push you forward, and then have the ideals to, or have the fear behind you to push you forward and upward, and then have the ideals in front of you to pull you upward.
Yeah, that's basically it. So I think that's a really good way to sort of think about that. And I think that's always the way that I've always, sort of thought about this when I'm like thinking about who I want to follow, or who is the sort of person I want to look up to or aspire to, and that's just like a very some sort of like a guide that I use to to sort of differentiate, not become like some Ferrari in my garage douchebag.
Right. What I've heard it from somebody. I don't know who it was, but it talked about having, and of course this can get very nuanced, and this is a pithy answer or whatever, but having kind of 3 different types of friend groups, and I use friend loosely, but it's having people who are quote unquote like above you, who you are who you aspire to be more like. It's people who are quote unquote on the same level as you, to help you give a more realistic guide on and comparison on where you are and maybe what you should be doing to get ahead, or et cetera, et cetera. And then you have people quote unquote again below you who you can help pull up to that next level, right? So it's not more so like you're a guru or whatever, but it's more so like, hey, this person over here needs a hand. I care about this person and I want to be that person for them. And I think having those three layers can be a really helpful way to think about it.
Yeah, I like that. I think I've heard that before.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know
But
who
yeah,
said it.
I like the idea of sort of helping, people who may need that help, for whatever that case is. But yeah, I think that's a great way to sort of,
Yeah, and I think with the going back to what you were talking about, kind of with the minimum effective dose, and where people struggle with, kind of the all or nothing mentality, or thinking that I need to go all in on something, or nothing. And I think people can start to understand it doesn't have to be that way whenever because they think that to get that jet, or to get, lose those 20 pounds or whatever, it has to be kind of all or nothing. But what you realize is after a couple periods of times where you start and then stop and then start and then stop and start and then stop, that's whenever you kind of fall in that middle ground where you were talking about, where you have that lower benchmark. But what's going to happen is, sure, you call it a lower benchmark, but that's actually going to allow you to reach higher, because you build on that over time. You start building momentum and you ingrain those habits and things. And then whenever you realize, oh, I don't need to go at 100% effort all the time in order to get what I want, and it's actually probably more sustainable to just be good enough most of the time, I think that can be a huge unlock for people. But they need to experience it, though, to believe it.
Yeah, this is something I say to like a lot of, not anymore, but like, when I talk about, like, when I get emails from like young guys occasionally, and they say, hey man, like, yeah, I just want to get shredded, and I'm like, cool, give them the whole, do this, do that. I'm like, and then it's always looking of like, I think I wrote this in an article once where it's like, it's not going to make you happy. Like, it's not, you're going to feel like shit. And it's good. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to put you off your goal. Like, I'm very much a believer in like being ignorant to some things, because I always say to like my girlfriend and stuff, and when I'm talking with friends, and or if some random person somehow sees like my photo at the gym or whatever, they're like, hey, how did you get so shredded, bro? And it's like a ton of broccoli and tilapia. No,
Yeah.
But one thing I say, I'm very conscious of the fact that it's very easy for you to try to do the right thing, as in it's going to suck, and you kind of, and almost to a point where you put people off. And I'm very conscious of the fact that if that's someone's goal, like, it's very easy to make someone, dissuade someone from to working on that goal, because you have the privilege of hindsight, so you can say, oh man, I wouldn't do this. But if you were back 5 years ago, whenever you were starting on this goal, like, you were excited about achieving this whatever this is. So now I'm very conscious of making people aware of some of the things that potentially could happen, but not putting in a way where it's just the most terrible thing, you should never do it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I know I say that to provide some context, because I wrote an article I think a few years ago where I said something like, having abs is not going to make you happy, and you're going to feel like crap, and then the next point was something like, but you're not going to believe me, and you're going to do it. You're not going to know until you experience it for yourself. And I think that's true of anything. Like, you always hear people say, oh, when you make a bunch of money, like, it's not as cool as as what you think it is. And I think this is also another thing that I've realized recently. Well, not recently, but I've realized at some point. I don't know when, but it just kind of hit me. And I've written about this quite a bit in like, and this essentially, that's why the process is so much more important, because it's not the abs. Like, the abs are just this metaphor for the kind of person that you want to be, right? Like, the person who has good eating habits, who consistently trains, etc. Like, if you want to write a book, you're not writing the book really, you're becoming the kind of person who writes a book. And so that's why the process is so much more important than the goal, because when you've achieved that goal, eventually you realize, that the hedonic treadmill kicks in and you sort of go back to your baseline level and you're like, okay, this is cool, but I really like to have a cheeseburger now because I'm like 5% body fat. But once the high of the goal dissipates, you're still that person, right? Like you've still built those good habits. So if you're someone who's lost weight and you've built these good, even if you gain some of that weight back, you're not as shredded anymore, you're going to still have those good habits. You're someone who can delay gratification. You have some sort of routine and structure. Like looking back on building physiconomics, for example, like if tomorrow, touch wood, physiconomics just went away, which is like one of the biggest anxieties I have, right. but I will face my anxiety for the podcast. So if physiconomics just like blew up and just went away, it doesn't matter because I still have all the skills, like all the stuff that I've learned, all the skills that I've learned during, the last 5-6 years, they're still with me. And I think this is something which I try and constantly tell people or anyone who listens that, yes, have a goal. Like that's amazing that you have a goal because, it's this essentially the benchmark that it keeps motivating you to wake up and, work towards this thing. But ultimately at the same time, you have to be aware of the fact that the thing that you're doing now, like right now, is way more important than whatever the end goal is going to be, because by the time that, when you've achieved that goal, you're still going to be the self person, who's achieved that goal versus just the person who has abs, right? This is, right. Yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. So
no, it's all good. It's the goal. Whenever you realize, because what's funny even about the abs part is like you don't even realize, like you don't wake up one day and you're like, oh, I've got abs. It's like you actually, as you're cutting and things, you don't actually notice your progress as much until you look back at the before photos and you're like, oh shit, I've actually lost quite a bit of weight. Yeah. And because you see yourself every day and you become accustomed to it and you have the hedonic, like the benchmark keeps getting further and further, right? Yeah. Until one day you look back. But the important part is not that you wake up one day and have abs. It's that you did all of that work in between to obtain that goal, right? It's not the actual goal that made you feel so great and amazing, right? And this is actually exactly what happened with whenever I won my natural bodybuilding pro card. I remember standing up on stage with the trophy, and I was like, fuck, I thought I'd feel a lot better about this. And it was just like, all right, this is cool. This is great. Now what? And then after it was over, I was like, all right, I'm never going to do that again. I'm done. And then, so it's like, but I wouldn't have made that realization unless I made that goal and then accomplished it and then was able to decide.
Yeah. And the thing with that is it's not something which, it's like you learned a lot of skills and there was value in that process. Like, right. I think it's very easy sometimes for us to do stuff which we just do it and it's like there's no value in it, or it can be destructive. So I think sometimes maybe you're not happy when you get to the end goal, but that's not the point. Like the goal in and of itself is just this benchmark that you've set, which it's a tangible way for you to it's essentially like you personified the kind of person you want to be, like cool, the person who has a six-pack or the person who can bench whatever, and
right,
or who writes a book or whatever the case is. It's like these are all just a personification of future you. Like it's just the kind of person you want to be, and so like the more you can focus on the process is going to be that's why it's so much more valuable for you to focus on that, like on just the now and the thing that you're doing right now, and sometimes a part of that is not going 100%, and actually I realized this as well, is that I only have 3 or 4 hours of productive work in me, like and this was just something, a realization I had to come with, and just accept it. Like if I try and push myself more than that, like the work just sucks, and then it's just like there's no point. It's like it's almost like you're kind of like junk volume, where you're just kind of doing stuff just because you have this arbitrary idea of, oh, but fuckface over here works for 9 hours, that's why I've got to do it. And then you realize that it's just like I'm realizing that once I have those 3 to 4 hours, I can also start planning my day to have, okay, when I'm at the most, creative or whatever to do this, and then the rest of the day can just be filled with admin stuff or anything else I need to do. And that's been super helpful as well. And I think people just need to be very honest about, who they are and what's realistic for them. Like, and again, it's not for me to share anyone's goals. Like, if you want to, do you, like, that's cool. But at the same time, I think just being very honest with, who you are and what is realistic for you, it's beneficial. At least that's what I've learned.
I think it's important to think about what if this doesn't make me happy, right? I made a mini-sode on that the other day about, like, what if you never reached your fitness goals? Like, would you still do it? Like, would you still, like, what would happen then? I think that's important to at least think about and consider, because you might reach that goal and then you're not happy. And I think this happens often, and it doesn't fill that void that you're looking for. And then you can actually freak out even more, right? Than beforehand, because you reach the goal and then you're like, shit, this wasn't what I was looking for. Right. And so, yeah, it can be a hard mirror to look at. Yeah.
But I think it's definitely one that it's, if you let it, I think, because I think something is very easy for you to, reach a goal and you're like, okay, fuck, this wasn't it. And then you go do another thing and you're like, okay, well, this wasn't it either. What the hell? And by the time you're like 80 and you're like, well, I've accomplished this stuff and I still feel like a fucking package, like a sack of shit. So what the hell?
Right.
But I think, and again, this isn't me trying to, like, sitting atop my, cushy perches, like showering people with fucking some sage wisdom, and it's stuff that I'm constantly thinking about, stuff that I struggle with. And like, so yeah, I mean, I don't know, listen, don't listen. I don't give a fuck.
Dude, that's all this podcast is. It's honestly just a very selfish way for me to talk to other people and go through, because, like, we're very alike in many ways. And it's like, this is a very similar conversation that we'd probably have even if we were off air. Yeah. And that's exactly what I want. I don't want it to be just like a therapy session for me necessarily, but I do, the questions and things that I come up with, like I had a few questions on here. You know what's interesting? I had a few questions on here. We answered all of them without me even looking at the sheet. Like one of the first ones I had was, "What's a typical day for you?" And we just kind of
get through that.
we made it to
the longest tangent ever.
We made it to like lunchtime, and then that's it. But no, it's perfect, and I think that's one of the reasons why I did this podcast, and I think that's why a lot of people or a few people at least have gotten something out of it, and I think they'll get a lot out of this one too. And I want to be respectful of your time, so let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Adam, where can people find out more about you and your work?
You can just it's physiqueconomics.com, which is the website. I would pitch my Instagram page, but I'm not very consistent right now. So
if you like monthly posts,
if you like me posting once a year, you can follow me at Physiqueconomics. And yeah, that's about it. I mean, the best place where I'm writing more consistently is my weekly emails. That's like that's probably where I'm sending like most of my new content. That's where I'm sort of like pushing people to join. But hey, I get that emails in for everyone. So if you don't want to join, that's totally cool as well. You can just wait for my once a year post on Instagram.
There you go. I highly recommend you guys to check out the emails. They are fantastic. They are really good. And they're one of the few that I do actually read every single week. So yeah, kudos there.
Appreciate it.
And thanks for all you do. Of course, I know that it's a voice in the fitness industry that many people enjoy. So yeah, thanks for that. And thanks for coming on, dude. I really appreciate it.
No, anytime for you. I reject so many podcast interviews, which makes it sound like a total shithead, but I'm just like, no. But
I appreciate that.
Always got time for you, man.
I appreciate that a lot. I'm sure we'll do it again soon.
100%.
Absolutely.
I still got to finish more rest of my day. So.
There you go. All right, dude. We'll talk soon, okay?